Today's guests say 2017 will be a year of disasters and decisions. As watchmen, we cannot be silent. We must warn. Stay tuned to learn these details.
When you think that God is done with Israel, that He has replaced Israel with the church, you're basically insulting God, because Israel is your insurance policy that God indeed is a faithful God. Amen? If He changed His mind about Israel, He can change His mind about you.
I really believe that a Trump presidency, in fact, means that Bible prophecy is being fulfilled even faster than it was before. Things are moving forward very quickly now, at breakneck speed.
This is Understanding the Times Radio with Jen Markell. Today, Jen talks with J.D. Farag from Hawaii and Amir Tsarfati from Israel. J.D. and Amir are here to discuss the issues and decisions that will be made in 2017 that will fit into Bible prophecy. Both Jan's guests are considered by many to be watchmen on the wall. These are men who warn about the last days and present the hope we have in the return of Jesus Christ for His church. This is one of those programs you'll want to listen to again and again. Both Pastor Farag and Amir will return to the Minneapolis and St. Paul metro area on October 7th for our next Understanding the Times conference. Now, let's get started. Here is Jen Markell.
President Trump, thank you for the truly warm hospitality you and Melania have shown me, my wife Sarah, our entire delegation. I deeply value your friendship. To me, to the state of Israel, it was so clearly evident in the words you just spoke. Israel has no better ally than the United States. And I want to assure you, the United States has no better ally than Israel. Our alliance has been remarkably strong, but under your leadership, I'm confident it will get even stronger. I look forward to working with you to dramatically upgrade our alliance in every field, in security, in technology, in cyber and trade, and so many others, and I certainly welcome your forthright call to ensure that Israel is treated fairly in international forums, and that the slander and boycotts of Israel are resisted mightily by the power and moral position of the United States of America.
And welcome to the program. I'm so glad you could join me. The familiar voice of Prime Minister Netanyahu. We'll talk a little bit about that and much more in the next hour. And if you are a discerner of our times, you know we are in a season where keeping up with all things predicted keeps one very, very busy. The Bible talks about the future, and the future is actually here. My two guests and I will discuss that today. Amir Tsarfati travels the world unlocking the mysteries of what the Bible predicts for the last days. He lives in Israel and found the Messiah through the Jesus film shown in Israel. He has been at 2 of my Understanding the Times conferences. Will be with us this fall on October the 7th. Pastor J.D. Farag is pastor of Calvary Chapel, Kaneohe, Hawaii. He has produced regular prophecy updates via YouTube for over a decade with tens of thousands of viewers weekly. Both are watchmen on the wall, sounding an alarm, and the biggest alarm they are sounding is this: time is running out. What does that mean for you and your loved ones? We'll give contact information just a little bit later. Pastor Farag also joins me this fall on October the 7th. Say more about that just a little bit later. Gentlemen, welcome, one of you in Hawaii, the other in Israel, the miracle of technology. Thank you for joining me. JD, let me just start with you, but I want you both to feel free to jump in and answer any question I'm addressing here. Just because I'm sort of addressing Pastor Farag, Amir, you just feel free to comment as well. But you have said more than once, JD, in your weekly online updates, that a Trump presidency means the eschatological or end-time clock is moving along even faster than before, that the outline of things to come in the Bible are certainly not on hold. They are escalating, in fact. Why do you feel that to be the case? They're escalating under a Donald Trump.
Chiefly because President Trump's pro-Israel and pro-Christian policies have inflamed, for lack of a better word, the powers of darkness And the devil knows he hath but a short time, we're told in Revelation 12:12. In Revelation 20:12, Jesus said, "Behold, I come quickly." And the word he uses for quickly is a very interesting one in the original language of the Greek New Testament. It's the Greek word tachos, where we get our English word for tachometer, that measurement of revolutions per minute, or RPMs if you prefer, meaning that the time is set and things will be revved up at the time of the end when Jesus comes. And certainly things are revving up. And what's happening now, what we're witnessing now, especially with Trump being so pro-Israel, we are seeing now the powers of darkness rising up, unleashed, if you will. And it's the likes of which I believe we've never seen before, nor will we ever see this side of the rapture.
Okay. But JD, you also said, this is a quote, "We are in a very dangerous place now as a nation and the world in general." Clarify what you mean there.
So the main reason I believe that we are in a very dangerous place as a nation is because the anti-Israel, anti-Christian left will not sit idly by, which is what we're now seeing vis-a-vis the likes of one Barack Hussein Obama, who many believe is setting up, even as we speak, a shadow government to destroy President Trump. As for the world in general, specifically as it relates to Israel, Jesus provides us with a somber warning concerning the elect at the time of the 7-year tribulation, the Great Tribulation. He says in Matthew 24, verses 21 and 22, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except," very interesting, "except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened." Here's the bottom line. I'm personally of the belief that the world now, especially with a Trump presidency, is one click of the mouse away from all hell breaking loose, namely the Great Tribulation.
Amir Tsarfati, why don't you weigh in on this as well?
I believe that there is absolutely no doubt that we are on the brinks of a very, very major war in the Middle East. And in America, I must say, the lawlessness is going to increase. And Europe, as we all can see, is in shambles, and as a result of the uncontrolled wave of immigration that brought up crime into unbelievable numbers. In the streets of France, in the streets of the Netherlands, in Sweden. By the way, Sweden, President Trump, I think, did touch a very important point of a very good example of how the illegal immigration is bringing down society. There is no doubt that the world right now is either busy in looking for alternatives for Trump or ridiculing him, but the fact that he's there is actually causing the world even to go faster, as Pastor J.D. said, in the efforts to delegitimize Israel and to bring about some other solutions. And it's interesting, this is exactly why Prime Minister Netanyahu is traveling like never before to somehow find friends wherever he can, because we understand that very tough times are ahead of us.
You're listening to Understanding the Times Radio. I'm Jan Markell. I have on the line from Hawaii Pastor J.D. Farag. Many of you watch his prophecy updates online, and we'll give some contact information here in just a moment or two. And Amir Tsarfati. Amir has been at 2 of my Understanding the Times conferences. Both gentlemen will be with me Saturday, October 7th, along with Dr. Mark Hitchcock and Michelle Bachman. Gentlemen, back on February the 15th, now a couple of weeks ago, there was a historic meeting between Benjamin Netanyahu, President Trump, and I say historic only because I'm not sure an Israeli prime minister has ever been received so warmly. Prime Minister Netanyahu was beaming ear to ear. An 8-year nightmare is over for him. And I've talked a lot on this program about the global elite, the one-worlders. Let me start with you, J.D. Farag. Do you think they're going to stand for a strong America under President Trump and for this new climate of cooperation between Israel and America? And then we'll get a response from Amir.
It's so important to understand that these protesters that we see on the streets of America are paid by George Soros, who to me is the personification of evil. This is a man who is demon-possessed and obsessed with everything that is anti-Israel and anti-Christian for the purpose of ushering in the New World Order. So to answer your question, and again, this goes back to why I believe it is that things are revving up like never before. Not only will they not stand for this, they will unleash the demons from the pit of hell to do everything to destroy what Trump is doing.
Amir, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. If there is one thing that the global elite understands is that they just lost in 2 battles. They lost the battle of the U.S. presidency, and they lost the battle of the United Nations Security Council. If you heard the American ambassador to the UN, you understand that the Security Council will not anymore, at no point, condemn Israel unilaterally and will put the blame on Israel as the problem in the Middle East. So right now, the global elite needs to do something else. They need to somehow cause the delegitimacy of the Trump administration, and at the same time, somehow cause division even within the area in the Middle East. Iran and Russia are right now under a lot of pressure. I mean, when I say a lot of pressure, I have never seen anything like that before. There's a lot of stuff I cannot talk right now about from what we know that is being done right now. But just from what has been released, Russia, it's supposed to be right now ceasefire, by the way, and supposed to be almost the end of the battles in Syria. Russia started a huge wave of bombardment in the southern part of the Golan Heights near the city of Daraa, and the Iranians are now arming to the teeth. The Houthis, the second in command of the Yemenite army, was just killed this morning by the Houthi rebels. We're talking about generals in the Houthi army that are basically threatening any U.S. vessel, naval vessel, that will come into Yemenite territory. We are seeing such an increase of instability, an attempt to instigate almost some sort of artificial crisis, because they understand things are not the same as they used to be in the last 8 years, when somebody in the White House used to do all their job and they didn't need to do anything. Right now, they need to work hard on somehow destroying America and destroying Israel. And they need to do much more than just be there and stay quiet. And I see that. Definitely the global elite is behind this whole thing, because who else? I mean, obviously America is not behind it, as the administration is different. We see that it's private billionaires and very, very influential people, both in America and in Western Europe, that are pulling the strings behind this whole thing.
Well, you gave, back on October 15th, here in the Twin Cities, Amir, you gave a breathtaking message on how Europe is preparing the way for the Antichrist, and we can't go into that now. Obviously, we have that on CD and DVD, and we've had quite a lot of feedback on that message. We also played it on radio, so that reached a lot of people, and I think you opened the eyes of some folks. And of course, there's controversy. Where does the Antichrist headquarter out of? I think in the Bible it's clear that it's going to come out of the old Roman Empire. But I want to pick up on a couple of things both of you have said. And if we have to pick up in the next segment, we can. But Pastor J.D. Farag, you have said this: we are in the last hour of human history. I want to pick up on that. And Amir, you have said 2017 will be a year of disasters and decisions. Let me start with that, Amir. 2017 will be a year of disasters and decisions. Expound on that a little bit.
One of the things that Jesus said both in Luke 21 and Matthew 24 regarding the characteristics or the signs of the end of the age, it was to do with some nature disasters and some earthquakes and pestilences and all of that. But just the earthquakes and volcanic activity alone, we've been seeing in the last 2 months more activity than almost the first 6 months of 2016 combined. We are looking at earthquakes in pattern and in strength and in frequency that is very unusual. So many eruptions of volcanoes around the world, across the globe basically, all the way from South America, including 2 European places, all the way to Indonesia and to some other far remote islands. And we see that the earth is groaning. We see that things are really unstable even in that area. Look at the floods that we see, in storms that we see, that unprecedented in so many different countries. Even what is going on in the West Coast right now in America. And definitely in that area, I believe we're going to see much more happening, but also major decisions, because when we are on the brinks of major wars, then of course comes the tough decisions of who stands with who and when and how. And, for example, a decision about moving an embassy to Jerusalem, it's a big decision. For example, a decision about Russia to say, okay, enough is enough, we're no longer friends with Israel, we're actually going to prepare ourselves for an invasion. This is a big decision. For Iran, from quiet and in the corner for all those years to somehow flex its muscles and say, okay, we're joining them, this is a big decision. And these decisions, I believe, we will see them in 2017, because time is short and so much is happening. Just think about it. Trump only had 1 month in office. Look what's going on around the world. And it's only going to get worse. And not because he's bad, it's because right now the light has been turned on and you can see all the cockroaches running and all the rats are running all around. You can see that which was done in the darkness cannot be done in the light. They just don't know what to do right now. And they are just running all around trying to find their place. And it is ugly, and it is going to manifest itself in a greater way in 2017. This is my estimation, and I think that the first 2 months of 2017 are a great indication for something way, way worse than that.
If you'd like to learn more, folks, let me give some contact information here. You can reach Amir Tsarfati at beholdisrael.org. Highly recommend you kind of tap into the various places. He gives updates electronically, Facebook Live, YouTube, his website. You can reach Pastor J.D. Farag, Calvary Chapel, Kaneohe, and that's calvarychapelkaneohe.com. That's in Hawaii. Perhaps easier to look him up on YouTube to catch his weekly prophecy updates. He has a channel there, J.D. Farag, F-A-R-A-G. Interesting combination I have here. I have someone with an Arab heritage, Pastor Farag, and obviously Amir Tsarfati from Israel came to, well, I think you were born in Israel, correct, Amir? Your parents came there?
Born in Jerusalem.
Your parents came there in the 40s, did they?
My parents both made Aliyah, made it to Israel. My mom, when she was less than a year old, after her parents survived Auschwitz, and she was born in Cyprus, basically, because the British Army would not let them in. Father came from Northern Africa, from Tunisia.
When I get back, I want to pick up on the other question I raised here a moment ago, and that's Pastor J.D. Farag's comment. We are in the last hour of human history. And I also want to pick up on the fact that Amir has a burden, and that is to teach people about an event that is, frankly, imminent, and that would be the rapture. And I want to ask him a little bit about that. And many churches know very little about this, and frankly, many of them don't care. We'll do that in just a couple of minutes. Don't go away, and don't touch your dial.
Today's Understanding the Times broadcast is one of those programs you'll want to share an audio copy or two with your friends and loved ones. This kind of information is rarely found in the media or online. You have an opportunity to share it at church or among family members. To order your copy or copies, call 763-559-4444. We like to keep in touch with you through a variety of resources such as our newsletter, e-news alerts, and our daily news headlines. All those resources can be yours by clicking on to olivetreeviews.org. Many of you are excited every week when a new episode of this program comes your way. Just think of all those people who have never heard Understanding the Times. They're being kept in the dark on many of the topics we discuss. You can help us maintain this broadcast in your neighborhood. You can help us expand this program into areas we have yet to go. Consider becoming our financial partner. You want to blanket the entire USA with this program? You can help make it happen. Please send your tax-deductible gifts to Olive Tree Ministries, Post Office Box 1452, Maple Grove, Minnesota 55311. In just a moment, we'll return with J.D. Farag and Amir Tsarfati. It's not too early to make plans to attend Understanding the Times 2017, Saturday, October 7, just outside of Minneapolis. Join us at Grace Church in Eden Prairie from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. There's no cost or registration needed. You can spend the day with like-minded believers who don't think it's strange that you want to understand the times and also discern the times of Bible prophecy. Speakers include Amir Tsarfati.
Our book, the Bible, contains 29% future events. 29% of this book is Bible prophecy. God wants us to know even the future.
Dr. Mark Hitchcock.
So I don't believe we should scoff at signs. I don't believe we should be reckless speculators, but I do believe that signs of the times are important and that we live in a time today when the stage is being set.
Pastor J.D. Farag from Calvary Chapel, Kaneohe, Hawaii.
Jerusalem, as Joel Rosenberg calls it, is the epicenter. It is the second hand on God's prophetic clock. You want to know what time it is in terms of Bible prophecy? Look at Jerusalem.
Michelle Bachman.
Jesus Christ is coming back. We, in our lifetimes, potentially could see Jesus Christ returning to earth, the rapture of the church. This is one of the most exciting times in history. We need to be exactly watching the tenor of the times, be observing, and look up our redemption draw-off night.
Hotel information is posted at our website, olivetreeviews.org, or call us for complete details at 763-559-4444. That's 763-559-4444. We have promised that we'll keep talking about today, but always with an eye on tomorrow and the hope of His return.
The day will come and He will make all things new. But until then, we live in this world. But God says, through His people who wrote the Holy Scriptures, He warned us, 1 Peter 4, verse 7, He says, the end of all things is at hand.
If you peel all the layers off of everything that is happening in the world today, particularly in the United States today, what you'll find at the core is the Christian and the Jew. That's what this is all about. When you take all of the politics out of it, you peel all the layers back from it, that's what you're going to find. This is a world that is increasingly hostile, as we were told it would be, to God's people.
Today's Understanding the Times radio guest will be in our speaker lineup at our next Twin Cities Conference, October 7. We hope you plan to be part of our fall event. J.D. Farag pastors Calvary Chapel in Kaneohe, Hawaii. A native Israeli, Amir Tsarfati, travels the world teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now let's return to Amir and J.D. with Jan Markell.
What if you were given a newspaper in which you could read about tomorrow's headlines today? It might seem interesting, but not all that important. But what if the newspaper contained details about the biggest story of all time? More than that, what if it told of destruction, disaster, directly affect you and your family? And what if that prophetic paper could help save you and your loved ones? Certainly you'd pore over every detail, maybe even commit it to memory. What many Christians fail to realize is the Bible they hold in their hands every day is itself filled with end times prophecies and headline-grabbing predictions of our future. And it may just be the future is here.
Indeed, the future may be here. We're talking about those kinds of issues. My guest for the hour, Pastor J.D. Farag from Calvary Chapel, Kaneohe, Hawaii, and of course Amir Tsarfati, beholdisrael.org. And as I left my last segment, I said I wanted to pick up on a couple of more topics immediately, just in the interest of time. Pastor J.D. Farag, throw the question out to you because you made the statement. I heard you say it. We are in the last hour of human history, and I think if we're a headline watcher, people like us can probably connect those dots, make that kind of a conclusion. Is there anything specifically that leads you to say that we could be in the last hour of human history?
Yes, both foundationally and specifically. First, foundationally, the certainty with which I believe that we are in the last hour, the last moments of world history as we know it, is anchored in what Jesus said in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24. And Amir referred to this particular prophecy, but also in Luke 21, verses 29 through 32. And I want to read Mark's Gospel, chapter 13, verses 28 through 30, concerning the parable of the fig tree. Jesus said, "Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is near. So ye in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass till these things be done." To me, that started the clock. Then, fast forward to the year 2017. Now think about this. I believe with all of my heart that this is the last hour because the mathematical odds, just by sheer virtue of the numbers statistically, everything coming to pass simultaneously on the world stage geopolitically is off the charts. I'm no mathematician, but to me, there is an unstoppable momentum of sorts, such that I cannot see a scenario in which the pause button could be pushed. Rather, I see the fast forward button being pushed instead. I liken it to the analogy of something having a shelf life. Bible prophecy has a shelf life, and I'll explain why I say it that way. 10 years ago, we could not have the discussion that we're having today. And I would submit that even 10 years from now, we cannot have the discussion that we're having today. In other words, we are at a tipping point, a breaking point, a boiling point, and there's only so much time that the proverbial iron can be struck when it's hot. In other words, there's an expiration. Could we see, as Amir mentioned, what we're seeing now today with Russia and Iran? Look how fast everything is moving. Can you imagine 10 years from now? I don't think that it's even plausible that we could see what we're seeing today, 10 years from today.
I think it's interesting that nobody is even asking anymore, what is Russia and Iran doing in Syria, right a mile away from Israel? Yes. It's not even a question anymore. The world got used to it.
Yes, got used to it.
Everybody wakes up in the morning. It's easy to attack Trump. It's easy to attack Israel. But nobody's asking the question, how come two sovereign countries are inside another one on the border with another one? I mean, it's almost like, Ezekiel had no problem, describing that, but the world, it's almost like the world believes Ezekiel because it's so accurate, but they don't want to get the message. It's like, yes, Iran should be here. Yes, Russia should. It's almost like everybody got used to it. Well, nobody's even asking that question. Nobody asked Russia to go out. Nobody demands Iran to go out. If anything, the only two elements in Syria that are actually fighting each other about, who gets where, when, and what, is Russia and Iran. Russia didn't want Iran to go into Aleppo, lest Iran will declare a victory that is not hers. The point is, the world got used to it. And just as JD just said, we could have not talked about this 10 years ago, not even 3 years ago. And yet now we're talking about it so naturally, as if, yeah, of course, they're there. They should be there, yes. They should be there because the Bible predicted that they will be there.
Right, but Amir, part of the problem is the churches are silent about these issues. And you state, you hear from people in 200 countries are writing you. The remnant from 200 countries writing you, because the remnant has a hunger and a thirst to understand these things. But most of the churches, not all of them, and pastors, don't hear me saying all of you, too many are preaching a very fluffy gospel or a very anti-Israel gospel. Let me read an email I just got. I'm reading just a couple of lines of an email, not going to identify anybody, other than it's from Cindy, and she says, I emailed my pastor to see if he planned to preach on Revelation or the importance of supporting Israel or the issues of the day. He responded no to the book of Revelation because of not having a strong understanding, and to Israel he said, this is a tougher question since I'm still in process here. And he says, my understanding of Israel has changed over the years of biblical study, and I no longer believe they are in any sense God's people now unless they come to know Jesus as Savior. So my understanding is this is a church that once had truth, no longer has this truth, and if you knew how many emails and communications I get that sound like this, I think my audience would be quite stunned, or maybe not. Maybe they've encountered the same thing. Pastor Farag, you're a pastor. Is this pretty common?
Sadly, it is. This is commonplace. And how ironic that this pastor would, in fact, say what he said about the book of Revelation, and even more specifically Israel, when in Revelation chapters 2 and 3, you have 7 letters to 7 churches, one of which is lukewarm, and another of which Jesus writes and says to them that those who think they are Jews and are not, and he talks about this church. You have the first church leaving, not losing, leaving their first love, the church of Ephesus. You have Smyrna, Pergamum. You have Thyatira. You have Sardis. You have the church of Philadelphia. And then you have that church of Laodicea, where Jesus is actually on the outside knocking to get in. I know we use that verse in evangelizing. Behold, Jesus stands at the door and knocks. But if you really think about it, he's knocking on the door of a church. And I believe he is knocking on the door of that church, of that pastor who is saying that, wanting to come back in and sup with them and them with him. And that to me is sadly ironic.
Folks, if you'd like to come out and meet Pastor J.D. Farag, Amir Tsarfati, Dr. Mark Hitchcock, Michelle Bachman, do so this coming fall, Saturday, October the 7th, Grace Church, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, just outside Minneapolis. It's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., no cost, no registration. We had quite a crowd last fall. We had about 6,000 people in a venue for 4,300, largest crowd that church had ever seen fill the particular premises, because, again, and they come from across the country, even some from out of the country, because the remnant is very hungry, the remnant wants truth, the remnant knows that finding truth, well, it's just kind of a difficult thing today with our politically correct world. We also were right before our November election last October. Gentlemen, I also teased, and I want to follow up on that, because, Amir, you have a burden to teach people about an event that is imminent. The Bible says it could happen today, and that would be the rapture. Again, many churches either haven't been prepared to teach on this, don't want to teach on it, consider it divisive, whatever. God has obviously given you a burden to teach on this. What kind of response are you getting?
Well, I get all sorts of responses. I mean, and some of them quite shocking, because although the word rapture is not there in the scriptures, because, you know, when you read it in English, you obviously read the English translation of the Greek. And the Greek word is harpazo, and it is there. People still believe that if the word rapture is not there, then there is no rapture. And in fact, it's hard for people to grasp even the thought that they are going to lose gravity and they will be taken up in the air. Sounds too weird for them. It sounds too unrealistic. And what's so sad about this is that they don't have a problem reading the Bible and seeing all the miracles that Jesus did. They don't have a problem seeing how Jesus himself ascended to heaven. They don't have a problem reading about Enoch and about Elijah. But whenever it comes to the blessed hope, the amazing promise to the church, for them to be taken out of that hour of trial that is about to come, namely, we will be out before it will come, all of that, then that's when it's getting too weird and we can't take that one. It's funny because it seems like they believe the world more than they believe the Word. How can you read 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, or how can you read 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 51, 50?
Yes.
How can you read all of these things and not see clearly that we will be caught up and we'll meet him in the air and he will take us and we will be with him. So where he is, we will be also. And then from that moment, we will always be with him. For me, this is the single most important thing that a Christian should know in these last days, that there is hope. I mean, we just talked about terrible things. We just talked about how the world is going crazy. We just talked about wars and rumors of wars, about pestilences and earthquakes, and we talked about so many things. But for us, these are just small things compared to the great promise that we have to be taken out of here. And how can I be only dealing with the bad things and not deal with the single most important thing for me as a Christian, which is that I'm about to be out of here. Out of here before God is going to judge this unrighteous world. Out of here before the Antichrist will unleash all of his demonic plans. Plus, I think that one of the reasons people don't really deal with the rapture is that their lack of understanding also of the book of Revelation, which causes them to think that, Christians should stay here throughout the tribulation, and then thus there is no rapture. What's the point of being raptured when you have to go through the tribulation? So when people are not in the Word and they're too much in the world, then the Word becomes just too weird to them. And I've heard so many different variations of what the rapture is all about. Even someone just told me that he believes that we will be taken up to the air, but not go all the way to heaven, but just usher Jesus' coming in back to earth. In other words, we are the welcoming party or committee for Jesus to come back. So many unbelievable things. And I think that there is a very, very poor teaching of that particular thing. And so we need to give the hope for the people. I believe that doom and gloom is part of what's coming up. We know that, but there is a great hope, the blessed hope, as Titus chapter 2 says. And so I have no doubt that preaching that hope is causing people excitement and not fear, because fear is not from God. It's certainly not for us. We are definitely watchmen. We know what's coming up. As Ezekiel 33 says, we have to alert, we have to tell people, but at the same time we have a great message of hope, a blessed hope, probably the most important thing that a Christian should know in these last days and in this last hour.
Amir, it's like you say, we cannot be silent. Many who will speak up are going to be mocked, they're going to be scorned, but the watchmen cannot be silent. But J.D. Farag, it's like you said in one of your messages, there are so many who seem to be longing for the treasures here on earth. They love the world and the things in it, which is a little bit difficult for me to wrap my brain around, but it has to be true. And they have become almost spiritually disabled, as you put it.
I liken it to being physically disabled. And the reason is that, for the most part, the Church of Jesus Christ today, especially in America, has their roots too deep in the soil of this world. And that tight grip on this world and the things of this world creates a spiritual disability. One of the things that Bible prophecy does is it loosens our grip on this world. It readies us and steadies us for eternity. And in Matthew 6, while it's in the context of mammon and property and possessions and so forth, Jesus makes such a profound statement when he says that where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. He doesn't say it the other way around. Where your heart is, there will your treasure be. No, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is going to be. So if I'm laying up for myself treasures here on earth where moth and rust can destroy and thief can break in and steal, then that's a pretty good indication that I don't have my treasure in heaven, and I'm not keeping my eyes fixed on Him. And one of the things that personally in my own life, both studying and teaching Bible prophecy has done is it has loosened and even removed the grip that I once had many years ago on this world and the things of this world. And Amir mentioned it. It's very interesting in 1 Thessalonians where Paul, in the context of the rapture, says that, this is what's coming to and on this world, and we're not going to be here because we're going to be taken out of this world in the rapture of the church before the 7-year tribulation. And then he says, therefore, encourage one another with these words. It's to be an encouragement.
Here's where I want to go in our last segment, and we're heading into that in just a minute. Amir, I do want to ask you a little bit about the perception Israel has of Donald Trump, particularly since that February 15th meeting, and I'd like your reaction to that February 15th meeting between Netanyahu and President Trump. And also, because, Pastor J.D., your parents were immigrants here back in the early 1960s, I want to ask you just a little bit about this immigrant crisis that the Western world has. I get some feedback from both of you. And J.D., you've got a fascinating story and coming from Lebanon and all. We'll do that, folks, in just a couple of minutes. I'm coming back. We're going to wrap this up. We have a short segment, but don't go away, please. We're coming right back.
An outstanding conference is being planned for this coming fall. On October 7th, you'll hear from Michelle Bachman and Dr. Mark Hitchcock. They'll be joined at that live event by today's two radio guests, J.D. Farag and Amir Tsarfati. You don't want to miss this year's gathering. Mark your calendar now and plan to join us. For more conference details, visit our website, olivetreeviews.org, or phone 763-559-4444. We are so thankful to hear from so many of you weekly as you send in your financial gifts to help keep this broadcast airing from coast to coast. In the months to come, we hope to expand our coverage across America. We invite you to pray with us that new media outlets will be made available, and pray that we'll have the finances to purchase the airtime. You can become a financial partner with us just by sending your tax-deductible donations to Olive Tree Ministries, Post Office Box 1452, Maple Grove, Minnesota 55311. No gift is too small. Two guests, one from Hawaii, the other from Israel. We'll return to Jan's conversation with both right after this.
This program has tried to provide a voice for the remnant believers for almost 16 years. We began on one station in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, but quickly expanded as those who wanted the truth of our times were across the country. We can't thank you enough for being a part of our team with your giving and your prayer support. The Olive Tree family has grown beyond all our expectations. To keep this message alive in your neighborhood, would you consider a tax-deductible gift to Olive Tree Ministries in 2017? Just write Box 1452, Maple Grove, Minnesota 55311, Box 1452, Maple Grove, Minnesota 55311, or find our donate page online at olivetreeviews.org. You can always call us at 763-559-4444, 763-559-4444. Remember, we keep an eye on today's headlines, but we also look at what the Bible says about tomorrow and the hope of His return.
The renewed relationship that we have with Israel, finally, after 8 long years of shameful disgrace of Israel by the previous president. I was so blessed and even impressed with the White House greeting that the Israeli Prime Minister and his wife Sarah received. To me, it was the antithesis of what Obama did when Netanyahu came to the White House and he made him enter from a side entrance and then had him wait for hours before they met.
Here to wrap up our final segment of today's Understanding the Times, Jan Markell.
Welcome back. Remember, I try to stay in touch with you with a print and e-newsletter both, and you can get a CD of any program, including this program. Follow me on Facebook, Jan Markell's Olive Tree Ministries, on Twitter at Olive Tree Men. And let me see here what I'd like to kind of move quickly just because this is a short segment. Amir, let me just quickly throw this to you because I think Americans are a little bit puzzled, and we all know that many Jews are left-leaning politically, and in some other issues they're left-leaning. But what is their perception of President Trump, and particularly, and I want your take on what happened back on February 15th, this incredible meeting where the Netanyahus were just received with a loving embrace by the Trumps, etc. Give me your comment.
First of all, what a difference between the first meeting with Obama that happened almost at midnight, and he had to be smuggled through the back door. At nighttime without any media that was allowed to cover it. I mean, it's almost like you smuggle a leader of a terrorist organization with whom you need to meet, not your best friend probably in the whole world. And so it was a great difference between the first meeting with Obama and the first meeting with Trump. Trump could have not made Netanyahu feel more comfortable. But I think we have to look at the substance of the meeting. For the first time, this whole junk of two-state solution that has not been working since 1947, since it was offered by the UN and it has been rejected every time, repeatedly, by the Palestinians and the rest of the Arab world that encouraged them not to accept it. Finally, somebody has the courage to say whether it's one state or two states, as long as it's okay with the two parties, I'll accept it. Which means I'm not going to dictate anything to the region because obviously so far it didn't work. And then came up the big bomb that Netanyahu dropped, which obviously Trump was a little bit surprised that he did that. And that was, we're not even looking at only the Israeli-Palestinian direct talks. We're looking at a regional talk, regional peace with the moderate Sunni Muslim countries like Saudi and the Gulf states, and together with Jordan and Egypt, that will be a great alliance. Interesting, because 2 days later, the Saudis immediately said, we're willing to work with the Trump administration about these things. They did not say that it's not going to happen. And so we see that with all that is happening in the Middle East right now, and all the extreme Shiite terrorism and the extreme Sunni terrorism, both ISIS on the Sunni side and Iran on the Shiite side, Saudi and the Gulf states are actually looking at Israel as the solution, not the problem right now. And there is no doubt, even Bible prophecy in Ezekiel 38, you see that Sheba and Dedan, the Saudis, are criticizing the attack of the Russians and the Iranians, the Libyan, the Sudanese, and the Turks on Israel. They are on the side with the Europeans and the Americans that criticizes this whole thing. So it's fascinating to see how we're moving to that track that could have not happened before. By the way, just so you know, Netanyahu offered this whole thing a year ago, and it was actually brought down, shut down, by the American administration of that time. So we see unbelievable things that are happening. Does the media in Israel love Trump? No. The media, of course, is not on his side. They portrayed him as a lunatic, as a crazy man, and they even associate the anti-Semitic events with the Trump administration. They don't understand that those who hate Trump are actually causing or trying to embarrass him by causing all of these things across America of attacking Jewish people and attacking. Why would Trump be accused of being anti-Semitic when he's the best friend of Israel and he has a Jewish son-in-law and a Jewish daughter? Of course it's irreasonable. But you can see that with all the fake news and with all the fog and with all the confusion, those that hate Trump are hurting Jewish people, so it will look as if Trump and Trump supporters are doing that. So all that together, it's quite staggering. And of course, the Israelis aren't sure what's going on. If they believe the media, obviously Trump is bad news. But when they see a U.S. ambassador to the UN that speaks in such an amazing way, when they see a president, first lady praying before her husband speak, when they see a president that receives their prime minister in the most loving and supporting way, then they see something else. So again, the media is playing a very, very significant role in trying to confuse the people, even here in Israel. But I think the majority of the people of Israel are pretty much on Trump's side. especially after the February 15 meeting that they all saw and were quite amazed.
Thank you for that clarification. That's excellent to have a first-hand report like that. Just because the clock races here, JD, I want to throw this to you, but Amir, feel free to comment as well, please. JD, you have said that the main reason that the migrants, the immigrants, are pouring into America, for that matter, the Western world, is that they eventually expect to get Sharia law here or in Europe. I call it immigration jihad. And your family were immigrants from the Mideast in the early 1960s. They came, I believe, from Lebanon. They actually assimilated. And as you peruse, as you see what's going on in Western Europe and in America, my goodness, and you talk about it on your YouTube presentations. Talk to us about it for a minute or two.
My mother and father, when I was 9 months old, fled the Middle East because of Islam. They immigrated legally as refugees to America. My father said, quote, "Soon after he left Egypt, persecution of various Christian groups as well as Jews began as they lost their jobs, their property, and their civil rights." This is March the 20th, 1963. They came to America. They worked hard. They became citizens. They started businesses. My father was a high school teacher. And the reason they had to flee to America from Islam is because my father says, quote, he attracted some Mohammedans, Muslims, to Christianity, and that thickened the problem with the government because they thought he was dangerous. Now think about that. Under Obama, the Christians could not come.
Right.
My parents, if it was under Obama, would not have been allowed into the United States of America.
That's right.
And conversely, those who are truly dangerous, quote unquote, are being let in. It's a Trojan horse, as Michelle Bachmann has talked about on your program, by the way.
Right.
It is a Trojan horse. They are coming. They are already here under the banner of this immigration, this migrant crisis.
Amir, your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that if you want to know the outcome of this illegal, radical Muslim immigration, just go to Europe. Go to France, go to Sweden, go to the Netherlands, go to Germany, and ask their own people. It is unbelievable, and the media will not report. I'm talking about the world media. Mm-hmm. The global media will not report that. And I have a lot of connections in Europe. In fact, I'm quite surprised that with all that I said about Europe, both in regards to the Antichrist and in regards to what is going on right now, I'm still being invited to Europe to speak. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you that the Europeans are so angry, they are so humiliated with what their governments did, and you're about to see one government after the other. All the very liberal left governments are going to fall, one after the other, including Angela Merkel. Yes. She won't stay in power because the damage that has been done to those countries is almost irreversible. And as long as the local, at least non-Muslim, majority is there in Europe, they will try to topple this, or they will try to turn it around. And look what's going on even in France. Marine Le Pen is saying, we have to tackle that. And if it takes, even for me to ban Jews from wearing the yarmulkes, then I will do that, as long as I can stop radical Islam from infiltrating into France, because I'm not going to allow that. So you can see that Europe, in the process of stopping Islam, is going to even sacrifice Jesus and sacrifice anything that has to do with the Jewish, Judeo-Christian symbols, as long as that will stop Islam from taking over.
Gentlemen, hundreds of evangelical leaders here in America say that we must do the same thing, allow in as many Islamic refugees as we can, even though the agencies bringing them in forbid any kind of witnessing, so this probably is a social justice issue, but hundreds of evangelical leaders are making an appeal for as many Muslims to come in here as possible. Gentlemen, I am out of time, but you both are sponsoring a tour to Israel in November of 2018. You've got 30 seconds to talk about it.
Well, I'm just honored to be able to go with my Jewish brother in Christ as an Arab to Israel.
How do they contact you?
What they can do, they can contact Behold Israel at info@beholdisrael.org, and we will discuss all the details. We're in the very, very beginning of this process of starting working on that tour, but we're definitely going to have a tour in the land in the last 8 days of the month of November of 2018, and we are expecting a lot of people to come and be blessed by on-site teachings and a wonderful journey throughout the land of Israel and the land of the Bible. And Pastor J.D. has inspired thousands across the world.
Amen. Both of you
I
have.
believe with all my heart that there'll be a great response.
BeholdIsrael.org, CalvaryChapelConneohe.com. You can find Pastor Farag on YouTube, both gentlemen on YouTube. Amir does a lot of Facebook Live. I encourage you to tap into all of this. Coming out and meet them October 7th, Grace Church Eden Prairie, just outside of Minneapolis, with Michelle Bachman, Mark Hitchcock as well. 9 to 5, you don't want to miss it. We'll have some cutting-edge information. Gentlemen, I am totally out of time. I want to thank you, though, for joining me today. Let me quickly say, going out of here, let's always look back and thank Him. Look around, serve Him. Look ahead and trust Him. But always look up and expect Him. He's coming again, sooner rather than later. We will talk to you next week.
Thank you for joining us for today's Understanding the Times Radio with Jan Markell. We continue to reach the world by reporting current events from a biblical perspective. Costing us thousands of dollars, this listener-supported program is delivered each weekend, nationwide and into your home. You can help us produce and distribute this broadcast. We invite you to partner with this ministry. With our ever-changing world, men and women of faith need to be aware of current events as reported and discussed through the lens of Scripture. With a blessed hope in view, week after week, Jan Markell brings you compelling guest interviews to highlight the dangers in today's world. To become our broadcast partner, please write with your tax-deductible gifts to Olive Tree Ministries, Post Office Box 1452, Maple Grove, Minnesota, 55311. You can also help underwrite this program safely and securely at olivetreeviews.org. or when you phone 763-559-4444. We're looking forward to hearing from you this week. And please continue to pray for the Olive Tree Ministries team for daily global updates with a biblical worldview. 24 hours a day, log on to olivetreeviews.org. Next week, Jan returns with another program designed to help you understand the times.